partnership for mutually accelerated growth, sustainable development, and inclusive multilateralism. South Africa will host the leaders of Brazil, Russia, India, and China at this 15th BRICS Summit from the 22nd to the 24th of August, 2023. It will also be preceded by a state visit that we will get from one of the BRICS leaders. The BRICS group brings together some 3.2 billion people. After the United Nations and the non-aligned movement, BRICS is among the largest bloc of countries by population. As part of our strategic intent to further advance the African development agenda within the BRICS group, we are inviting several other African leaders to the summit, together with other regional blocs around the world, those that are leading and coordinating those blocs. One of the priorities during our chairship is to build a partnership between BRICS and Africa to unlock mutually beneficial opportunities for increased trade, investment, and infrastructure development amongst the BRICS countries. We are focusing in particular on opportunities that will generate economic growth on the continent, particularly through the African Continental Free Trade Area, and also focusing on infrastructure. There are great opportunities for BRICS countries to participate in infrastructure development on our continent, and also take up opportunities that will be given rise to by the African Continental Free Trade Area by locating production and services activities on our continent and partnering with local companies and entrepreneurs in various sectors of the continent's economies. Another strategic priority is strengthening multilateralism, including working together towards real reform of global governance, institutions, and strengthening meaningful participation of women also in the economy and in peace processes as well. Our priorities respond to challenges and opportunities that are shared by South Africa and BRICS members. They are also responsive to the needs and concerns of the broader global South. One of the founding values of BRICS is the need to restructure the global political, economic, and financial architecture to be more equitable, balanced, and representative as well. The BRICS countries agree that the United Nations must remain at the center of multilateralism and be reformed to make it more effective, more inclusive, and much more representative of the global community. This includes reform of the United Nations Security Council to ensure that African countries and other countries of the global South are properly represented and that their interests are effectively advanced and cared for. A practical example of the contribution of BRICS to the advancement of the South-South agenda is the new Development Bank, which was established by BRICS countries in 2015 to provide financial support to emerging markets and developing countries for infrastructure and sustainable development. The bank has to date approved 11 projects in South Africa, valued at around 100 billion rand, in areas like road improvement, ports, water provision, and energy. In 2021, the bank welcomed Bangladesh Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, and Uruguay as new members, firmly positioning the bank as an important global financing mechanism for emerging markets and developing economies. The BRICS relationship extends beyond just governments of the member countries. Bodies such as the BRICS Business Council, the BRICS Women's Business Alliance, the BRICS Think Tanks Council, and the BRICS Civil Society Forum ensure that the opportunities of this association are explored and expanded across society. The relationship seeks to promote people-to-people contact, including among youth formations. Among other things, this person-to-person contact enhances travel and tourism between BRICS countries. In all, there are some 190 meetings and events that will be taking place during the course of this year in preparation for the summit that will take place in August. Through its chairship, South Africa will continue to work with its BRICS partners to pursue the African agenda for growth, for development, and also integration, and to advocate for the needs and the concerns of our own continent, as well as for the global South. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable T.N. Mutle.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Thank you very much for your response, Mr. President. It must be noted that currently there are some around the globe, including the United States of America, who are raising concern about our relationship with the BRICS nation, in particular Russia and China, to an extent that they are pressurizing or urging South Africa to take side on the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Imperialists, Mr. President, are propagating negative narrative about our relations with Russia and China in particular. We must remind them of their own inconsistencies in military exercises conducted between South Africa and other BRICS nations. When the USA was in our shores for a military exercise last year in July, they were quiet, but now they are making noise with the current Russian ship and the China Navy that are in our shores. We appreciate one of the 5 priority areas to be advanced by South Africa during its tenure as the chair of BRICS, which includes strengthening of multilateralism. Mr. President, how will South Africa ensure that other African countries benefit from the BRICS establishment within the context of African continental free trade area? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable, the President.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I indicated, South Africa, and this it has done each time it has hosted or chaired BRICS, has always seen its own membership and participation in BRICS as being a participation and membership that should benefit the continent of Africa. And to this end, we encourage those other African countries to have good relations with various other BRICS countries, but also to participate in the outreach program that we have always put in place, where we invite them so that they can be part of the discussions that will take place at the BRICS summit. And we have found that their participation leads to a whole number of other benefits on a bilateral basis with the other 4 BRICS countries, including ourselves. So the BRICS summit becomes a forum which brings together various countries on our continent to engage. And some of those engagements move from contact to contract. And we are very pleased when those countries do deepen and broaden their own relationship with the other BRICS countries. And this we have found most beneficial. And we did actually find this to be beneficial indeed when during the pandemic, we as South Africa, working together with our continent, advocated for debt forgiveness, for debt reduction, for debt standstill. One of the BRICS members responded very positively to the intervention that we made as South Africa and was able to forgive debt and to reduce debt for some of the African countries. So we find BRICS as a very powerful platform or forum that is able to be beneficial in more ways than one, from trade to investment and to support in a variety of ways. And we found that when it comes to investment, there's a great deal of support, not only from the New Development Bank, but on a bilateral basis as well. One of the BRICS countries was most beneficial to us right at the beginning of the pandemic when we had a challenge with vaccines. And India demonstrated that the relationship that we have within BRICS can indeed be beneficial to us as well, because we were one of those countries that benefited greatly at the hour of need. Government of India provided us with much needed vaccines. Thank you very much.
I thank you, Honorable the President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, the ANC hasn't been asked to take a side, they've chosen a side. And I think that's typified by the fact of the IEC's most recent declaration of party political funding, where your party was the recipient of a 15 million rand donation from a sanctioned Russian oligarch. And one can only assume that is why BRICS has not been used as a forum to be able to condemn Russia for their actions. Mr. President, given the fact that you've announced that a BRICS head of state will be joining us here in South Africa, could you tell the House today, who is it going to be? Is it Mr. Modi, Mr. Putin, or Mr. Xi Jinping? Thank you.
The Honorable the President.
I didn't specifically confirm who it would be, because at the diplomatic level, matters are still being finalized. The last time we had a BRICS summit, we had 2 state visits, more or less at the same time. And it kept us very busy. And this time around, we will have 1 state visit so that we are then able to pay close attention to the summit, which is in many ways going to be much bigger in terms of the attendance of other countries than the last one. So at the appropriate time, we will be able to tell South Africans which of the 4 heads of state will be coming for a state visit. We are still finalizing those discussions, and at a diplomatic level, and we will tell you way in advance. Actually, I'll come and whisper to you, Mr. Steenhuisen, maybe way even before we disclose it. Have you polished up your Russian? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, Honorable President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable MGE Hendricks. Honorable Hendricks, are you on the virtual platform? Honorable Hendricks, will you please unmute yourself? Okay, Honorable Hendricks, I'll come back to you. May I now recognize the Honorable Shengwa?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, to build on the last one, it's quite telling that you won't tell us. It's probably because you're in a diplomatic quandary because of what is going on. I bet my last dollar it's Russia. But Mr. President, the fundamental issue confronting South Africa now is that we've been grey listed. And all the BRICS countries, of course, are members of the FAFT. But at the same time, you're making a clarion call for African countries to join BRICS. Amongst those grey listed is South Sudan, Uganda, Tanzania, Nigeria, Senegal, DRC, Mozambique, to name but a few. What interventions are there in place or are you proposing to have in place as part and parcel of the BRICS 2023 agenda to assist one South Africa, but also African countries who are on the grey list, considering that all the BRICS members are actually part of the FAFT? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable the President.
The issue of grey listing obviously is a great concern to all of us as South Africans. And our Treasury team worked very hard to ensure that we reduce the number of concerns that had been raised. And we were able to almost eliminate all of them, bar I think 5 or 6 or 7. Now those are being addressed, and we are hoping that we will be able to address them to a point where we will be removed from the grey listing, or what they call enhanced monetary section. As part of that, as South Africa, in terms of our own relationship with various other countries on the continent, we obviously continue to raise some of these issues of a governance nature, of good legislative nature. And so this has clearly given us an opportunity to look at ourselves, but also to play an advocacy role in relation to the various other sister countries on the continent. And we are therefore, as part of the 15 countries on our continent that sits on the UN Financial Ministers Committee, we are opening up discussions on this matter, because as we improve governance on our continent, this is one area which we need, all of us need to pay attention to. So our advocacy role is therefore going to also delve into this, so that we should have a number of countries being taken out of the grey listing. And this we are determined to do. Our Minister of Finance sits on that AU committee, and their discussions have started gravitating in that area. So we are going to be focusing on the issues that have been raised by FATF, so that all of us can get out of that group of countries that are grey listed. But thank you very much for raising the issue.
Thank you, Honorable President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable MGE Hendricks.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. Honorable House Chair, I would like to ask the President whether there are any plans to invite Indonesia to join BRICS. As you know, my constituency, we all
Will you please help? Honorable Hendricks, you seem to have muted yourself again. Unmute, please. Okay, we now proceed, Honorable Hendricks. Question number 2 has been asked by the Honorable, the Leader of Opposition. The Honorable, the President.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, it is correct that in order for policing to be more effective, it needs to occur closer to the people and together with the people. However, it is incorrect to suggest that this can only be achieved through the devolution of policing powers to provinces or municipalities. A central pillar of our fight against crime is to ensure that communities are able to contribute to improving local safety and security through effective community policing forums. In line with the recommendations of the expert panel into the 2021 July civil unrest, we have taken steps to ensure that there are CPFs at all police stations throughout the country. To date, a total of 1,156 police stations in the country have active CPFs. The South African Police Service Act is being amended to strengthen the functioning of community policing forums, including through the provision of adequate resources. Government does not have a policy on devolving policing powers to provinces, as policing is a national competence. The Constitution is very clear in this regard. Section 199(1) of the Constitution says, the security services of the Republic of South Africa consist of a single defense force, a single police service, and any intelligence services established in terms of the Constitution. Furthermore, Section 205(1) of the Constitution says the National Police Service must be structured to function in the national, provincial, and where appropriate, local spheres of government. The National Commissioner is, in terms of Section 207 of the Constitution, responsible to control and manage the police service in accordance with the national policing policy and directions of the Minister of Police. In terms of Chapter 11 of the Constitution, the responsibility of the National Commissioner to control and manage the single National Police Service cannot be transferred to a member of the Provincial Executive Council or to a municipal council. In keeping with the requirements of the Constitution, we are working to build an integrated police service to ensure effective governance and accountability and optimal coordination and alignment across all the three spheres of our government. The fight against crime will not be advanced through the devolution of policing powers, but by mobilizing all available resources and capabilities, working alongside and within communities to improve policing throughout the country. That, we believe, is the best way in which we can continue to bring the levels of criminality down. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, Honorable President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable, the Leader of Opposition.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, on the 29th of January this year, the body of 16-year-old Jamie Lee Julius lay face down in a pool of muddy water. She had been brutally raped, brutally murdered. Her older sister found her body there, picked her up, and carried her to a nearby house to try and get assistance. She had succumbed to the rape and her wounds. I'm sure my condolences and that of the House are with the family of Jamie Lee Julius, and Mr. President, you and I can only imagine the pain of that family.
Yes.
Mr. President, Jamie Lee's story is not unique. It happens 82 times a day, every single day under your government. And under Minister Pele, you continue to keep on as the Minister of Police. Despite your promises to tackle gender-based violence and violent crime, on your watch since becoming president, crime has gone up in murder by 40%, from 56 to 82 murders today. Mr. President, Section 99 of the Constitution, and you've been very selective in your quotations today, allows you to assign any function that should be formed by an act of parliament to competent provincial and local government, including the South African Police Service Act. Mr. President, how many Jamie Lees have to be raped and murdered every day until you replace your useless police minister and devolve policing power to a local level, where it is proven through the pilot projects in the Western Cape that you yourself have lauded on occasion to be effective in combating violent crime? Thank you.
I thank you, honorable member. The honorable the president. Oh, there's a hand. I'm sorry, Mr. President. Point of order?
Honorable Speaker,
Yes.
the Honorable Steenhuisen referred to the minister as a useless minister. Can you withdraw that? Because the rules doesn't allow for anyone to cast aspersion on any.
Thank you
Any
very
member.
much, honorable member. That's, I will check it, but honorable members, order. Order, please. But what, honorable members, I will check this and come back to you. But I do want to make a plea that we should not continue to cast aspersions on one another. Thank you very much. Now we proceed. Honorable Mr. President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I guess it is easy for the leader of the opposition to politicize the issue of crime in our country. And in a way, it sounds like this is an electioneering type of speech. Now, we take the issue of crime very seriously. And to this end, we have, for both criminality generally and also gender-based violence, have been demonstrably taking action to make sure that we address this. One of the things that we need to do in our country is to
Order.
make sure that we increase visible policing, as we should strengthen our community policing forums. In the two State of the Nation addresses, we did promise that we are going to employ more police because the number of our police had gone down in relation to the growth of our population, and the ratio between police and the population had really gone out of sync. And with the increased number of officers that we are employing and training, we believe that these are the important steps that need to be taken to bring down the levels of crime. And already with the 10,000 that have been trained and have now joined the ranks of the police, we believe that visible policing throughout our country will improve. The other area that we are focusing on is to have the teams that are going to focus on criminality that happens in areas like, for instance, illegal mining, those who rob banks and all that. So all that is being focused on, And the training of our police is increasing, even the detective training is being focused on. And we now this year are going to be employing more police, as I said, in the State of the Nation address. All these steps are aimed at ensuring that, yes, we do address criminality, and the officers in the police are redoubling their efforts through the various actions that they take. And yes, arrests are increasing. Much as they are increasing, we still see rises in murders, in rapes, and robbery. But all these are being addressed in a fairly focused manner. And I have confidence that the minister, working together with the generals and indeed with the officers in the police service, we will be able to make great success in this area. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, Honorable President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable NP Peacock.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. To the President, thank you for the informative and empowering response, President. Honorable President, community-orientated policing is the cornerstone of our democracy, and it remains the operating paradigm of the South African Police Service. Honorable President, in your opinion, is there sufficient coordination between the national and provincial spheres of government to execute effective control over the police as per Section 207 of the Constitution? Similar to that, to what degree does national legislation and delegated legislation constrain effective control on a provincial and local level? I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable, the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I do believe that there is good coordination. The coordination between national, provincial is actually well led and given oversight firstly by the minister, as well as by the national commissioner, as he works through the various provincial commissioners. Every one of our provinces has well-trained, well-experienced provincial commissioners who work together with the national commissioner. And the minister himself, as we know, is able to give oversight and support to the commissioners as a whole, and travels throughout the country from time to time to give that level of support. And I believe that with his intense focus on the levels of criminality and working together with the commissioner and the provincial commissioner, we have been able to enhance coordination. So coordination in the end is not a problem. And in terms of ensuring that it is in line with the legislation, I do firmly believe that that is the case. So at the coordination level, with a single national police force, we are able to say that, yes, we comply with the Constitution and the work continues. And we find that the work is best coordinated with a single police service, as we have in South Africa right now. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. Honorable members, the next supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Majosi.
Madam Speaker, I'm advised that this is a change to the sequence that was there. We were not on this question. May I request that you carry on with those on the sequence? Will come as number 4 on this question. just a few minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Shengwa. The Honorable, the third supplementary question then will be asked by Honorable Mente. I thought we were replacing Honorable Mente with Honorable Machozi. Yes, Honorable Shengwa, there is a request that Honorable Machozi would like to raise a question. And because Honorable Mente is not here, we are now providing you with that opportunity. Okay, if the Honorable Machozi is not here, I proceed to ask the last supplementary question, which will be asked by the Honorable A.M. Sheikh.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, we must admit that there is success, but limited success with CPFs and things. Would you perhaps, President, consider intervening if you look at police officers in this country in order to be motivated? They get 13 Rand a day as a danger allowance. Which one of us will send our children into that front line, risking their lives every day? Secondly, they travel by public transport, Mr. President, to live in informal settlements and townships with firearms, and they become vulnerable to criminals. Thirdly, their rate of pay needs to be reconsidered. Okay. Would you consider intervening in this matter, Mr. President, so that we could motivate these police officers and also redirect our approach to preventing crime rather than after the crime is committed? I agree with you, Mr. President, that no province is immune to crime. Every province has crime, but we believe we should redirect our approach to prevent crime and create a better, safer and secure environment. Would you consider intervening in that, Mr. President? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Sheikh, for a progressive suggestion. Yes, the issue of danger pay has come up in the various negotiations. And even now, the matter is being negotiated upon. It falls in that category of discussions that are taking place between particularly the public servants and in this particular case with the policing unions. So it is a cogent issue, and I thank you for raising it because they have raised it quite sharply, and it's a matter that is now subject to negotiations. The issue of transport, yes, is another big challenge that they have also raised, because you're absolutely right. For a police officer carrying a gun, getting into a public transportation facility, going to work, exposes that officer to dangers. And we have seen in the past that some of them are accosted and robbed of their firearms because they need to be traveling in a facility that will ensure that the property that they carry, which is the state's property, is well secured. Transport is, however, provided for many of our police officers. There are areas where it is not that easy, particularly when their vehicles are either busy or their vehicles break down. So it is a matter that does need closer attention. With regard to pay, it is one of those issues that are also being negotiated. So in the end, it is the whole of government that needs to look very closely at the type of settlement that can be arrived at. But in the end, it is also the responsibility of this parliament when the budget is presented, because the Minister of Finance has to balance a whole number of needs, and the needs keep growing. One of those needs was, of course, to increase the number of police so that we are able to positively temper with the ratio between population and police. So we are increasing the number, and at the same time, it brings about other challenges, which is increased salaries, better conditions of employment. But let me assure you, and indeed I'll also be able to assure those who are serving in our police force and indeed the defense force, the government is well aware of the challenges that they face, and the government is willing and prepared to make sure that their conditions of employment are well catered for and they are conducive for them to continue working for the benefit of the people of South Africa. And we are well aware that they make huge sacrifices. Some of them die in service, and they do this so that the people of South Africa can be protected. So we will take what you have said into account. Thank you very much for raising it.
Thank you, Honorable President. Honorable members, question number 3 stands in
Sorry.
the name of Honorable J.S. Malema.
Sorry, Honorable Speaker,
Yes, Honorable Singh.
I'm sorry to intervene like this. I wonder if the question for Honorable Majosi can be asked by somebody else from the IFP. She is having connectivity problems.
Okay.
Thank you,
All right.
Honorable. Thank you, Honorable
Thank you,
Speaker. I will go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Singh. Honorable
Thank-
Majosi, are you ready?
No, she is having difficulty answering.
She's having difficulties,
Yeah.
so we will take the question. Thank you. You may proceed, Honorable Member.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable President, good afternoon to you and all members there. I'm very encouraged by the fact that you indicate that we will have to ensure that we have a satisfied police force, both in terms of the salaries they earn and in terms of the infrastructure support they are given. But that is not always the case currently. Now, Honorable President, I think you and all of us are aware of the current strikes that are taking place around the country, which have turned violent, with even deaths of people taking place and even ambulances being prevented from taking their patients to hospitals. Now, I wonder, Mr. President, what wisdom will you have for the police in this regard? Because certainly the police have to come to the party to ensure that the rights of the majority of people in the country are protected. So that is my question, Honorable President, to you. Thank you.
The President. Thank you, Honorable Singh.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Singh, like you, we are all concerned about the violent nature of the strike that is underway. Workers in our country have the right to freedom of association. They also have the right to strike. But that right is not absolute. It is not absolute because there are certain workers who are in essential services, particularly workers, for instance, who are in the police service. That's an essential service. Workers who perform very, very intricate services in the health sector, like doctors, like nurses, whose absence and whose participation in the strike puts the lives of our people in danger. And so therefore, those workers who perform essential services, in our view, should not be on strike. They have the right to protest in whatever shape or form. But we should say that we will not allow any form of violence that will lead to people getting injured, people being prevented from performing their tasks, and also where lives can be lost as a result of people being on strike. We call on those who are on strike to continue to put the interests and the lives of our people ahead of everything else. The protests that are underway, yes, are well understood. They can express their dissatisfaction, but even as they do so, staying away from work, they must also know that it is on the basis of no work, no pay. So if you don't go to work, you will not be paid. And if you protest, you must protest very, very peacefully, and we will not allow the lives of our people to be put in danger. And as you correctly say, Honorable Singh, it is the lives of our people that we've got to safeguard. And during this strike process, we've seen many acts that are really concerning, where people who are sick and where workers who are in ICU units are being pulled out, and that is not acceptable. And we should never accept behavior like that. And we expect our health workers, yes, to protest, but at the same time, to put the lives of our people ahead of anything else. So we expect that as we move forward, these messages will be heeded, particularly the message that strikes, yes, you have the right to strike, but just we need to know that if you go on strike, there will be no pay, because we also need work to be done. And if you withdraw your labor, you should know that there will not be any pay that you will not be compensated. Thank you very much for raising it, Honorable Singh.
I thank you, Honorable President. Honorable members, question number 3 stands in the name of Honorable J.S. Malema. As the member is not present to take charge of this question, and no other member has been authorized to take charge of his question, Rule 13710B provides that the relevant member of the executive must still reply to the question, after which, withstanding Rule 142.5, the presiding officer permits 4 supplementary questions, each of 1 minute's duration. On the request
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Mr. President, sorry. Shall I name you Tile Apokwe machines, please? Thanks. Thank you, Mr. President.
Continue. Honorable Speaker, the escalation of crime and violence is one of the greatest challenges facing our country, as I said earlier. To a large extent, crime and violence is rooted in the social and economic conditions that prevail in our country, which have worsened significantly as a result also of COVID-19. These conditions are characterized by extreme inequality and poverty, spatial segregation, and high levels of unemployment. Many of these factors that contribute to crime go far beyond the scope of the mandate also of the police. A background note prepared for the World Bank in 2019, for example, notes South Africa's current challenges of crime and violence are rooted in a legacy of exclusion and uneven development. Crime and violence are consistently concentrated amongst excluded geographic and racial groups, where opportunities for socioeconomic advancement continue to fall short of real need, resulting in frustrated expectations. Therefore, central to the program of government and our ongoing engagement with social partners are measures to address the social and economic conditions that fuel crime. At the same time, effective policing is critical, though, in curbing crime and violence. I'm confident that the Minister and the National Commissioner of Police are competent and able to lead the government's collaborative approach to building a South Africa where all the people in our country feel safe. The Department of Police, under the leadership of the Minister, developed the Integrated Crime and Violence Prevention Strategy. This strategy complements other interventions that respond to crime and violence, such as victim support, access to justice, improvements to policing, and strengthening of the criminal justice system. The South African Police Service has also developed a national policing strategy, which was approved in September of 2022 and is currently being implemented by the National Commission. The National Policing Strategy includes an initiative to increase the number of South African Police Service members, which I spoke about earlier, which is underway, which in many ways will improve visibility as well as the capacity of the police. It also involves skilling more specialized units, such as family violence, child protection and sexual offenses units, organized crime units, police order units, tactical response teams, and a number of other units. The police continue to undertake targeted operations in crime hotspots. These include operations to tackle crime cross-border crime rather, between areas such as Mozambique and northern KwaZulu-Natal, and the deployment of multidisciplinary teams to counter the recent gang-related shootings in Westbury and surrounding areas in Johannesburg. The turnaround on the DNA backlog has almost been concluded, and capacity at the forensic laboratories has been enhanced. Now, many of you will recall that this was one of the big outcries, particularly by the women of our country, and we had a huge backlog that ran into almost 50,000 DNA samples. Those, the minister informs me, has now been completely eliminated. And I will be going to Gqeberha to go and open the laboratory, which I am informed is a world-class laboratory. But now we have seen also the value of cooperation between the police and other law enforcement entities through the Fusion Center that we set up. By the end of 2022, 193 people had been charged in COVID-related corruption cases. 42 court cases had been finalized with 40 convictions. This represents a 95% conviction rate. Ultimately, crime is not just a policing issue. As I said earlier, it is a societal issue. That is why the strengthening, I repeat, of the community policing forums and other community-based initiatives is an essential part of an effective response to crime. The Community in Blue initiative, for example, complements the work of the community policing forums. It encourages more citizens to be involved in community safety in a structured manner. It promotes reporting of criminal activities and suspicious behavior. It increases visibility in order to deter criminal activities, and it also promotes community participation in crime prevention initiatives. The fight against crime and violence requires great effort and focus. It needs an integrated strategy that harnesses all the capabilities of the police and the criminal justice system alongside the efforts of the broader community. And it is said that where, and I have seen this myself, where the community policing forums work effectively, we are able to reduce the incidence of criminality. Because quite often, the criminals are known in the community. And when the community participates effectively and works well with the police, we find that the levels of criminality can go down indeed. And this is one of the ways in which, yes, the police themselves can embark on initiatives that can ensure that we bring the levels of criminality down. I have confidence that as we increase the number of police, as we increase them and we have visible policing and they work with community policing forums, we will be able to see lower levels of policing. And of course, the training of police themselves has to be upgraded so that they are able to be more alert, to be more on the go, and ensure that the people of South Africa are safe. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, the Honorable President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, your response tells us that you know exactly what the problems are as far as crime is concerned in South Africa. And you will agree with me that every crime is committed in some local authority, some local municipality. And the question is enough being done at a local authority? Would you consider, Mr. President, having an imbizo or a boss barad, like some of them call, bringing in South African police services, basic education, social development, local mayors and things from municipalities, all the different stakeholders together with civil society? Because if you hear, Mr. President, in this house, many of us seem to have the solution. So let them all come together, let them contribute effectively, and let's identify what are the root causes, as you correctly identified, socioeconomic condition, dysfunctional families, 91,000 children giving birth to children last year, so that collectively we can contribute effectively and fight and rid the society of crime. Would you consider that kind of a boss barado in Imbizo with all the
Thank you, Honorable Member.
including people from this house? Thank you.
The Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And once again, Honorable Sheikh, I thank you for a wonderful suggestion. Yes.
Order, you may proceed, Honorable President.
I see, Honorable Sheikh, that you are so popular in this house on all sides. I particularly like the last portion of what you added, that we should also include members of this house. And you call it a boss barad, I would say imbizos. I will be continuing with the imbizos, and the ministers will also continue with imbizos as we go throughout the country to engage with our people. And we will make sure that the issue of crime occupies prime spot, so that we can actually get the wisdom and the suggestions and the views of our people. We've got the plans and the strategy, but we also want to make sure that our people understand precisely the efforts that government is putting in place to address the issue of criminality, and the participation of even members of this house would actually be something that would be appreciated by ordinary people on the ground. So yes, I will take your suggestion up, and thank you very much once again for that suggestion.
Thank you, Honorable President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable A.M. Siabi.
Thanks very much, Madam Speaker. And Tobela, Mr. President. The fight against crime requires collaborative efforts between law enforcement agencies and the community at large. and to apportion blame on the high level of crime to individuals would be more of a narrowed view on how to deal with crime. Maybe if you have to follow up on Sheikh Imam's question and put it in another way. Honorable President, how do we build a social compact on the issue of dealing with crime, meaning the bringing together of communities, civil society movement, and the law enforcement agency in a compact to collectively deal with crime? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member, the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker and Honorable Siabi. Another good suggestion indeed. If we look back into our history and indeed recent history, we'll find that we went through, as we were marching towards our democracy, we went through periods where violence was quite rife in certain parts of our country. And it was at that stage where we called on various role players, business, civil society, yes, indeed, and the police, even though they were the police under apartheid at the time, we were able to mobilize many people, including the religious community. And in that mobilization, we were able to bring down the levels of violence in many parts of our country. And this was a collaborative effort that involved the key role players and our people on the ground. And our people on the ground participated very, very actively. And the levels of violence were brought down. So our history, our precedents, and our experience does testify to the fact that when we work at a societal community level, we are able to tackle even difficult problems as the problem of criminality. We have done it before, and I do believe that it can be done once again. And now we've got formal structures like community policing forums. These are the structures that enhance collaboration, cooperation, and working together. It is true that where there is close working together between community members, civil society organizations, religious organizations, even sports organizations, business, together with the police, and yes, including political parties that have their branches in those areas, we are able to get the levels of criminality down. If we look at the number of policing forums that function well, where community leaders work together with police, and where they are able to cooperate with the police in the police stations and all that, we do find that that cooperation does lead to really wonderful outcomes. And it is this that we are saying we should embark upon. And I have seen how even when we're fighting against drug peddlers and where community policing forums exist, we find that even drug peddling in those areas does actually go down quite extensively, because even drug peddlers are known. Even those who commit a whole number of acts of criminality are known. And when the community works together with the police, then those things are eliminated. So, Honorable Siabi, I agree with you, and it is the way in which we can eliminate criminality. Thank you very much.
I thank you, the Honorable President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I think it would be of little comfort to the family of young Jamie Lee Julius that her murder and brutal rape has been
Order.
dismissed as simply electioneering. If we can't raise our people's pain in their parliament, Mr. President, where else can we raise it? Mr. President, forgive me, but your response is that we must look to your sonar to take comfort about what's to be done. Frankly, Mr. President, and forgive my cynicism, these are the same sonars that promised us social compacts, performance agreements for ministers, reduction in the size of the cabinet, bullet trains, smart cities, all of these things. And none of them have materialized. And the same as your promises on crime, which is why crime and murder has gone up 40% since you took your oath of office. Mr. President, we have a police minister who can't even catch criminals who are caught on CCTV committing murder. And I ask you then, Mr. President, my question again, because you didn't answer it the last time. How many Jamie Lees need to be brutally murdered and raped before you dismiss your police minister and give us somebody who's serious about tackling crime? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The President. Stop this running commentary. Please, wait. Please, Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Steenhuisen, I am just as pained as you are about the death of everyone, including young Jamie. I am pained as well. And the pain that you articulate is the pain that I also feel, and I believe many of us feel here. And of course, we do not want to see the killings of young children in the way that Jamie was killed. We do not want to see that. And it is to this end that we are taking all the steps that we are talking about. I mean, one of the things that this minister that you want dismissed right now. No, but listen first. One of the things that this minister who you want to see dismissed right now, is this the minister who raised the issue of the imbalance, should I call it imbalance, of the skewed ratio rather, the skewed ratio between police officers and the rise in our population. And he kept coming for, listen first. He kept
Order.
coming forward. And
Order, honorable members, please.
even if you raised it, you didn't raise it in the sharp way that he did. No, you didn't. Okay, let me put it to you. He raised it in cabinet, and you are not in cabinet. So, so he raised it so sharply, and I know what your objective is. He raised it so sharply over time and said, this ratio is skewed. And he then showed us, and this is very good as well, comparators, comparing ourselves with other countries. And as he raised it, I shouldn't use this term, the penny really dropped, because the levels of criminality have been going up. And one of the things that we realize is that indeed, we've got to increase the number of police. I think one of those who raised it also sharply, and if I'm giving Honorable Groenewald the credit wrongly, he will whisper to me one day, but he is one of those who raised it. Because when we looked at the ratio, we realized that indeed our population has been going up and the number of police has stayed stagnant, in fact, had even been going down. And it is for this reason that at the last SONA, I said, we are going to increase the number of police, not by 2,000, but by 10,000. And I've been to the graduation of those police officers, and I've seen how rigorously they've been trained over the whole year, and they will be going for further education and training as well. And this year we are also increasing, and we have said over the MTEF, we are going to be increasing the number of police because we need to have visible policing. That is one of the remedies that we have, including community policing forums, and of course, one of the things that this minister has also insisted on is to have specialized units. In the past, we used to have specialized units. Yes, they were disbanded, but now they are being brought back, and they are being brought back so that the police can be more focused, can be much more effective, and can be specialized. And the police are benefiting from that because some specialize in violence or crimes committed against women and children, some specialize in murder and robbery, some specialize in other areas. So those, as we reform our police service, as we focus more on criminality, these are some of the efforts that we're bringing to bear. And more reliance on technology as well. Yes, you say the murder committed with video cameras, those who have committed that are now being pursued, and they are going to be arrested. And that is the dedication that I really, really admire and I applaud the police for. They are doing the best. And some of them at great sacrifice to themselves. I often go on Police Day, I often go and meet the widows, the children of police who have died in service. And it is a sad and sorry sight to see how many police we are losing in service. But at the same time, I applaud our police because they keep getting focused on the work that needs to be done. They are brave, they are focused, and they are committed. And we need to applaud them for the work that they do for the people of South Africa. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, the Honorable President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable W.M. Thring.
Thank you, Mr. President. Gun and gang violence has claimed thousands of lives, with hundreds of children murdered, caught in the crossfire. A former police colonel, Prinsloo, was arrested for supplying over 2,000 guns to gang bosses. And these guns have been directly linked to at least 1,000 murders and 1,400 attempted murders. The officers who arrested Prinsloo have paid with their careers by being demoted, and one, Charles Kinnar, paid with his life. Mr. President, in your first term of office, you promised a new dawn. Instead, we have a new disaster. You also promised to deal with crime and corruption. Instead, we have some of the highest crime rates in the world. Mr. President, what words do you have for the parents or children who have lost their loved ones as a result of the dereliction of duty by some, and I repeat, some, not all, in the police service? And will you apply new interventions and consequence management by holding the Minister of Police and others under him accountable? Thank you.
The Honorable the President. Thank you, Honorable Thring.
Thank you very much. As I said earlier, I do once a year take time to meet the families, being either widows and children of those who die in service. And I do spend time talking to them and not only offering condolences, but also assuring them that their husbands did not die in vain. And we thank them for the service that their husbands and their sons, it's often been men who have mostly been killed. I think there was 1 or 2 women, but we do offer our condolences and our thank yous to them. When it comes to various types of criminality, and you just mentioned corruption, we have increased the arrests in relation to corruption. And this has also happened in the police service as well. There are quite a number of high-ranking police officers who have been arrested for corruption. This did not used to happen in the past. It is happening now, demonstrating our total commitment to dealing with all forms of criminality, including criminality within the ranks of the police themselves. The very police official that you were talking about, yes, will have been dealt with, and we will continue to ensure that there is accountability not only at the minister's level, but also at various other levels as well, to make sure that, yes, there is good work that will be done and that there will be accountability and responsibility. So that is the approach that we've been taking. And if you look at, as I said earlier, the number of arrests and convictions that we have had, even with another moment when we had criminality, for instance, just during the COVID period. The police and our investigating the SIU have really demonstrated that with greater focus, and the focus is also inspired by what we say and do at the top level. And they often say, this is what inspires us. This is what makes us focus on what needs to be done. Because we can see, as they say, that at the top level of the leadership of the country, there is focus on ensuring that we rid our country of criminality, of corruption. Now, of course, because the problem is so huge, it's so huge, but rather than give up, we've got to make every effort to ensure that we address the problem at hand. And this is precisely what we are doing. And if you look at the various initiatives that we are taking, though there are people in our country who track all that, who see that, yes, progress is being made. The right people are being appointed to a number of positions that used to be held by people who were compromised, people who were doing things that were completely deviant from what we want to see as values that are embraced by those who are in key positions. So there is a turning of the tide, but because it is such a huge problem, yes, I will concede, it is taking much longer than what our people expected, but it is moving, and the needle will continue to move. And this, I can assure our people, we will rid our country, yes, of the high levels of criminality, and we will also be paying close attention to corruption on an ongoing basis. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. Question number 4 has been asked by the Honorable J. Hermans. The Honorable the President.
In October, Honorable Speaker and honorable members, in October 2020, in response to the severe health, social and economic effects of the pandemic, government announced the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. The plan was founded on engagements among social partners, including government, labor, business, and community-based organizations. For the plan to succeed, government identified several key enablers. These include regulatory changes, a supporting policy environment, and enabling conditions for ease of doing business. They also include a capable state and effective social compacts. In this year's State of the Nation address, I spoke of the centrality of a capable and effective state in addressing the country's key challenges of poverty, inequality, and unemployment, including load shedding, crime, and corruption. We are therefore working to build a public service staffed by men and women who are professional, who are skilled, selfless, and honest. This includes the implementation of the professionalization of the public service framework. The framework itself proposes fundamental reforms, including a stronger emphasis on merit-based recruitment and appointments, includes also issues such as integrity testing before recruitment, revising the tenure of heads of departments, and curriculum development on ongoing learning basis. In the SONA, I announced that the National School of Government will work with other organs of state to conduct skills audit in infrastructure and frontline service departments. The skills audit will help to accelerate the professionalization of our civil service. It will also help to determine whether critical skills do exist to effectively deliver economic infrastructure and essential services. The key infrastructure and frontline service departments that will participate in the first phase of the skills audit will be transport, human settlements, sanitation, water and sanitation rather, cooperative governance, public works and infrastructure, home affairs, social development, and employment and labor. Now, to enable departments to deliver services more effectively and to establish a single public administration, amendments have been drafted to the Public Service Act and the Public Administration Management Act. The Department of Public Service and Administration is leading the Building State Capacity Program. This is intended to develop appropriate interventions and initiatives to enable the state to deliver more efficiently, effectively, and in a responsible manner. This includes collaboration and partnerships. There are multiple plans and interventions to ensure the successful implementation of the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. While we face significant challenges that we all know about, these challenges, Madam Speaker, are not insurmountable. With our social partners and through best practice, we will be able to address these challenges as we move forward. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable President. Honorable members, I've been informed that the Honorable S.H. Mbuyane will take charge of the first supplementary question in terms of Rule 137, 10A. The Honorable S.H. Mbuyane.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for your elaborate response. Honorable President, pursuant to the capable, ethical, and developmental state that we intend to build, what practical measures are in place, particularly at the local level, to ensure that governments build its capacity and capability through insourcing the services and also trying to limit consultants in the process? Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Mbuyane. The Honorable, the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Mbuyane. We have found that where the majority of services at the local level, where they are outsourced, that has tended to weaken local government. Because quite often we find that those who were employed to perform those services before the outsourcing process are kept and they are idle when the service is outsourced to others on the outside. And we've also found that the outsourcing process is wrought with a whole number of other challenges. Some of them including the level of overcharging. And the overcharging is a given because we still find those who were employed before the outsourcing are still getting paid, and those who now have the outsourcing contract are doing exactly the same work that was being done by those who used to do the work. So that in itself brings about a whole number of challenges. And where local government in-sources the services, we find that there's a reservoir of experience, there's a reservoir of knowledge, and the people who do the work have been doing the work for years. For instance, I once stopped on the roadside and saw people digging up the road, and I asked, I said, who do you work for? And they said, no, we work for the local council. How long have you been working for the local council? They said, one said 25 years, one said 22 years, and so forth. And I said, do you know the network, of the water network of this town? They said, yes, we know it like the back of our hand, because we've been working this for years. And I said, if this was to be outsourced, do you think the service that's outsourced to a company would be able to do it? They said no, because they do not have the knowledge that we have. And this is what I have found weakens our local government. And the work is badly performed by those who are parachuted in. So in order to strengthen our local government, it is best that we in-source. The people who work should stay working the work. The other problem, of course, with outsourcing, it's a double whammy, as they say. I'm sorry to be colloquial. We often find that those who have the contract actually underpay their workers. They even exploit those workers. And it gives the notion that, no, we are promoting entrepreneurs and all that. But if you look very closely, the workers are actually underpaid. But there is a place for entrepreneurs. Let me be clear. There's a place for entrepreneurs, and that is exactly what we need to be supporting. As government, we want to support entrepreneurs, but there needs to be areas and specialized areas where they can play a key role. And this is where our Black economic empowerment process must be sharper, it must be more capable, so that we're able to support them to perform tasks that are not necessarily easily performed by local government. So that balance needs to be struck so that everybody benefits. The local government is not weakened, and at the same time we strengthen entrepreneurs who are then able to perform tasks that will also strengthen government. That is my view, and that is how I believe we should do it.
Thank you, Honorable the President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, you cannot have a capable state with cadre deployment. You are mutually exclusive. Now, you chaired a committee within your party that implemented this policy, and many good people were displaced out of public service with the politically connected cadres. Now, Mr. President, that is precisely why we're challenging this policy in the court. During the SONA debate this year, Minister Lamola openly said, and I quote, ANC has done cadre deployment before, and we will continue to do it, unquote. Despite the glaring evidence that the Zondo Commission produced about how devastatingly damaging this policy is on building a capable state and how it engenders corruption. Mr. President, do you agree with them, and will you continue with the policy of cadre deployment?
Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. As a governing party, like any party that governs, we will appoint and place people who are capable, people who know what work needs to be done. Now, you may want to say that is cadre development. You may want to call it whatever. I know for a fact, I testified at the Zondo Commission. I testified there and I gave examples and I set out examples from the OECD, where the OECD did a paper on what governing parties do. And I brought it down finally to what the DA itself has been doing. Because the DA, no, but listen first. The DA itself, where it governs, it appoints people who are aligned with its own philosophy, people who are often, but I must give you one credit though. There was one time, one person, I think it's in the Western Cape, who was clearly sort of branded ANC, but the DA government kept that person. And why did they keep that person? Because they said that person is really good at what they do. But for the most part, no, Leicester Moy. But for the most part, the DA has been the real expert at making sure that the people that they appoint are people who are aligned to their own thinking and philosophy. You look at their records, and they've been unashamed about it. They've been quite clear that this is precisely how they operate. Now, they hide it. They hide behind this notion of accusing the ANC of cadre development. Now, I mean, no, but listen first. We have cadres. Amongst ourselves, we call ourselves cadres, like we call ourselves comrades. And I guess the Comrades Marathon got that term from us. That's what we call ourselves. Now, however, and I do want you to listen to this carefully. When we do get people appointed, we look at capability. And let me say, it does not mean, like in your case, it does not mean that there have not been people who should not have been appointed. That we will admit. Yeah, it does not mean that there are people who should not have been appointed. But when we do appoint people, we appoint people who have deep knowledge, and we check their capability, their experience, and that is how we appoint people. We will not depart from that type of approach. That will continue being our approach. So, and in doing so, we are no different from other parties around the world. That is exactly how governing parties operate. So that's what the DA does, and that's what the ANC will continue doing. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, the Honorable the President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable W. Boshoff.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker and Honorable President. Contrary to evidence, we do believe that good things may still happen. Noting your commitment to the implementation of the ERRP and the importance of initiatives to stimulate domestic economic investment, economic growth, and the eradication of unemployment, will you, as the Honorable President, personally and as head of government, commit to a rapid revision of the procurement policies of national government, provincial governments, and local authorities to allow for the purchase of exclusively vehicles manufactured within South Africa for use by the President, Deputy President, Cabinet Ministers, national government departments, provincial departments, and municipalities, thus stimulating the domestic industry? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable the President. Thank you, Honorable Boshoff.
Thank you, Honorable Dr. Boshoff, for that very clear and direct question. when I was elected Secretary General of the ANC in 1991, and we got into government, one of the things that I said then as Secretary General is that it would be good if we all in government travel in locally manufactured vehicles. That's what I said. And you know what the workers from NUMSA did? They immediately made a South African-made vehicle, a Mercedes-Benz, which they made with their own hands. And I think they even contributed some of their pay to build a red Mercedes-Benz for President Mandela. And they said, this is our gift to you as our first democratically elected president. It was a Mercedes-Benz. Now, clearly, Mercedes-Benz made here in South Africa by South African workers must qualify as a locally made car. Now, what do we make here in this country? We make cars that are, if you like, originated by your big original equipment manufacturers, the OEMs. And almost all of them are here. BMW is here, Mercedes-Benz is here, Toyota is here, Nissan is here, Volvo is here, and so on. And for me, the greatest joy, Volkswagen and all that, the greatest joy is to go to these factories and see these workers making these cars with great excellence and great capability. And they even bring workers from Germany to come and be trained here because our own workers have developed such great proficiency in making these cars, which we export. Now, much as in 1991, when I was a young Secretary General, I had this notion. Yes, I was 38. I was 38. I had these notions. But later when I realized that these are South African made cars. And at times, yes, you'll find that the car that, say, the president drives in is a BMW. But BMW is made here as well, and we export. And maybe the specific one that I drive in for security reasons and otherwise, because it's got to be armored and all that, it's not made here. But it is a thin line. It is a very thin line. But for us, the real pride must be that many of the cars that even ministers and deputy ministers drive in, including our police service, are made here in South Africa, whether they are BMW or whatever, because we are such a globally competitive country in terms of manufacturing. So that is what we should celebrate. And the celebration for me is to make a car here and we export it to the United States. We export it to Japan. We export it to Europe and the rest of our continent as well. For me, that is the joy. So we do make cars that we drive. Thank you very much.
I thank you, the President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable NLS Kwangwa.
Thank you very much. President, just for the record, when we take over power in 2024, we will also employ competent cadres of the UDM. President, one of the most common misconceptions about a developmental state economic model is to attribute its success to just its ability to building the capacity of the state and for it to create a conducive environment. While one of the features of a developmental state is the ability to enforce performance standards both in the private and public sectors. What has not happened so far, President, is enforcement as well of performance standards in the private sector where, for an example, in instances where we use the powers to revoke licenses, revoke tax breaks and subsidies from industries that are either non-performing or not doing what is expected in line with socio-economic objectives of the country, and whose objectives also do not support our industrial policies. Have we been able to identify such industries and such sectors of society which have not aligned themselves with the industrial policy and the socio-economic developments of the country? And if we have, what have we done about them? Have we used or tried to implement these performance standards on the private sector as well? Thank you.
The Honorable, the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The noise that was made crowded out your initial statement. Did I hear you say, when you take over power in 2024, you will also implement the same appointment method that the ANC uses?
We will deploy competent cadres of the UDM as well.
My apologies, Speaker, for encouraging a dialogue. I apologize. The answer to your question is a simple one. We have embarked on a policy of localization. And it's a policy through which we are calling upon and encouraging the private sector to focus more on utilizing products that are made in South Africa. We have been criticized for this, where those who have been critical of us have said, we will never be able to achieve that localization dream. And we are finding that a number of countries that started to, that allowed the firms to start importing a whole number of products that they could have made are now realizing that they've actually been exporting jobs. And they are now saying, we want locally made products. Because when you have locally made products, you are actually bringing back the jobs that you had exported. Now, we are in the process then of encouraging more and more products to be made locally, and we'll also be moving forward to saying, do we incentivize them? Do we, for those who do not use locally made products that are easily available, what do we do? Do we exert certain areas of I don't want a penalization? And we are in the process of straightening out, yes, our industrial policy platform in that way. Now you want to know why not, but this is a process that we have embarked upon, and it also touches on a whole number of others. Those companies, obviously, that do not comply, not only with the issue of localization, but a whole number of other processes, including laws, obviously have to face the strength and the might of the law, because the law if the law prescribes that things should be done in a particular way, it should then be done. And I can assure you that in a number of areas that is the case. In fact, through the DTIC department, including the competition authorities, greater focus is now being placed on those who err, those who do not follow those rules. And I do believe that as we move forward, we will be able, yes, to ensure that we greater jobs made, created here, particularly as far as I'm concerned, when we encourage more and more localization. We have exempted for a while the issue of localization when it comes to having to deal with load shedding, particularly those companies that have to bring in parts or implements that we do not make here locally. But at the same time, we have said we should also have build capacity to have those parts products or implements made here. So this is a journey, and it is a journey that I do believe will mature as we move forward. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
And thank you, Honorable the President. Now we proceed to the next question. And may I just remind members that you have a minute within which you raise your questions. I've observed that people go way beyond a minute. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable M. Fengwa. Sorry, Mr. President. Mr. President, the Honorable the President, you may proceed.
I thought Honorable Hlengwa wants to answer his own question.
No.
Honorable Speaker and honorable members, South Africa has more than 100 state-owned enterprises. Our state-owned enterprises play a crucial role in the provision of public goods and infrastructure to enable economic growth. But they can do so effectively if they are properly capitalized and managed, and if they have the capability and resources to carry out that role effectively. We have made significant progress in restoring good governance at our SOEs and undoing the immense damage that was done by state capture. As I announced in the State of the Nation address, government is undertaking a far-reaching reconfiguration of our state-owned enterprise landscape. This process of reconfiguration takes the overall approach that SOEs that operate in specific sectors of the economy should be placed under the relevant government departments. This is currently the case for most SOEs. The only exceptions are the 7 state-owned enterprises that are in the portfolio of the Department of Public Enterprises. The reconfiguration process is supported by the work of the Presidential SOE Council, which, among other things, has made proposals to strengthen the framework governing SOEs and determining an appropriate shareholder ownership model. Among the recommendations of the Presidential SOE Council is the adoption of a centralized shareholder model for the management of the SOEs, and that a state-owned holding company be established to house strategic state-owned enterprises and to exercise a coordinated shareholder oversight. This will delineate the functions of policy making and regulation from the shareholding and operations of those SOEs. Policy making and regulation will reside in the relevant departments. A holding company will instill effective governance, enhance the efficiency of those SOEs to achieve the government's developmental objectives, to ensure increased transparency and accountability, and promote the commercial sustainability of those SOEs. A state-owned holding company would enable streamlined governance processes, transparent financial systems, economies of scale, for instance, in procurement, shared transactional services, and adequate funding to SOEs to fulfill their respective mandates. The SOE Council is in the midst of an in-depth exercise to establish the strategic and developmental role of each SOE, their financial position and operational capabilities. As part of this work, the Council will make recommendations on which SOE could be placed in the proposed holding company. As I said in the State of the Nation address, the Presidency as well as National Treasury will work together to rationalize government departments, entities, and programs over the next 3 years. This work, which will review the role of all departments, including the Department of Public Enterprises, will inform the configuration of government going into the next administration. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, Honorable the President. Question number 5. Question number 5, Ujahile, has been asked by the Honorable M. Fengwa, the Honorable the President.
Honorable, thank you.
Hayi ke,
Umlomo, ngicela ungilekelele kancane.
nguwe lo.
Le mpendulo kade iphendula, bephendula
Ibibuye yakho.
sekuyimina-ke manje.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, respectfully, I put it to you that you're not committed to your own commitments. Insofar as the reconfiguration of government is concerned. In 2018, you said, as indicated in the State of the Nation address, we have begun a review of the configuration, size, and number of national ministries and departments. In 2019, you said, to promote greater coherence, better coordination, improved efficiency, we have combined a number of portfolios. In 2023, Mr. President, you said, the presidential SOE, which I appointed in 2020, has recommended that government adopt a centralized shareholder model for its key commercial state-owned companies, and you go on. Again, in 2023, Mr. President, you said, I have instructed the presidency and National Treasury to work together to rationalize government departments, entities, programs over the next 3 years. Every year, every SONA, you kick the can down the road. What has emerged today, however, Mr. President, is an indictment on you, wherein it says the Department of Public Service Administration in April 2019 handed over to the president a substantive report on the macro reorganization of the state. It was never done. What has happened, Mr. President? In SONA, I pointed out to you, every time your government departments and ministers fail, you take on the responsibilities into the presidency. You have done the exact same thing. So, Mr. President, are you committed to the commitments you made to the public, to the country, to the economy? Because it seems as if everything you say does not happen. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable the President.
You may want to recall that prior to 2019, we had 34 ministries. I reduced that to 28 with the initial reconfiguration that I spoke about. And we have had 28, and I did also say the objective is to reduce further. And recently what I did say at SONA, Treasury and the presidency, as including DPSA, are going to look at how we further reconfigure, because their reconfiguration report had brought us to 28. And I wanted us to go below that 28. This time round, because we are dealing with two key problems. The one problem is electricity, and I did say that I would like to appoint a Minister of Electricity, which would increase the number of ministries to 29 from 28. In the course of looking at everything, including the enhancement of the capability of the state and the implementation process to get us over these challenges that we're having, I decided that we now needed to have a ministry standalone of monitoring and evaluation to make sure that there's full implementation. That has then brought us to 30, but not to the 34 that we had. No, and I have clearly said, this is a transitory process. I've said that very clearly, and there's been clear transparency on this. It's not for the weekend. I have said so very clearly because the work that we need to get done is the type of work that we need to focus more attention and to ensure that the work gets done over the next 12, 15 months. And beyond that, in the next administration, when this party will be back as the governing party. When this party will be back as the governing party, we will come back and reconfigure the state following the report that will come. And I have said, I'd like to see the ministries going further down. And this is a fairly simple. This is a fairly simple and straightforward. The first one, and you asked the direct question. Yes, the Ministry of Public Enterprises will cease to exist. It will cease to exist because the entities that are now overseen by the Ministry of Public Enterprises will revert back to their departments. And as I've often been saying, the coordinating structure, which is your state-owned enterprise holding company, which is going to enhance proper coordination, give us all line of sight of what's happening in our state-owned enterprises, the financial discipline that should be there, benefiting, as I said earlier, on the economies of scale when it comes to procurement, the board, the governance systems, and all that will now be housed in a state-owned enterprise holding company as that ministry then exists. Now, that ministry, as I said, is now in the process of putting together the legislation, putting together the wherewithal through which this holding company is going to function. So that is the way we are proceeding. I did make this public when I announced the various two ministries that we're going to have. Beyond that, we are going to look at the merger of certain departments. There are departments that lend themselves to being merged so that we have a much more efficient executive where we have lesser ministries. Now, this is work in progress, and the end, as far as I'm concerned, is in sight. You may well say, this is what you promised and so forth. In 2019, we had 34 ministries. We did bring that down by 6. Now we've gone to 30 for the reasons, yes, for the reasons that I have set out. And all these are transitory because we've got specific challenges that we are addressing right now. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, the President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Nhlape. Hlape.
Yes,
Okay.
Madume
Sorry,
Tautona. Honorable President, the establishment of the Presidential SOE Council is a clear indication that the process of reconfiguration of SOEs is underway. And I thank you for explaining to us that this is a process. It's not something that can be done overnight over 12 months. Now, Mr. President, in addition to the strengthening of governance framework of SOE, what are other issues that the SOE Council is dealing with? Thank you.
I thank you, Honorable Shape. The Honorable, the President. The Honorable, the President, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, don't distract the President. We can, it's possible to finish at 5, you know. The Honorable, the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The SOE Council, the Presidential SOE Council, is dealing with a whole number of other matters. As I said, is dealing with the issues of governance, to look at how we streamline governance, to avoid the situation that we have now, where a number of our own state-owned enterprises have different governance processes and procedures, which are enshrined in their memoranda of incorporation. And we find, as we look at it, completely different ones. The board system of appointment is completely different, and we are the same government. We find that their financial systems are also very different. And when some of them are not even able to submit their annual financial statements, we do not have line of sight of that, because some of them almost operate hidden somewhere and we don't have line of sight. A coordinating structure, which was initially proposed by the Presidential Review Commission, which was chaired by, I think, Ms. Pierja, almost 10, 12 years ago, suggested precisely that. And now we are following through, and the SOE Council has confirmed that this is the best way of dealing with it. It is also looking at just the operational processes, but the more important part for me is the procurement processes, where we have not been able to benefit from the economies of scale when it comes to procurement. For instance, ESCOM, when it needs to procure steel, it procures steel in the billions. Transnet also has to do the same. Quite often they go to the same source, and they do not have a combined strategy of doing the procurement system, which can bring their prices down. And this in itself will help a great deal when it comes to procurement, utilizing our economies of scale. And there's also the question of balance sheet management. Through this, we will be able to manage the balance sheets of your state-owned enterprises in a much more efficient manner. And so the holding company concept we found would help a great deal. Other countries have it. For instance, the Singaporeans have it in an entity called Temasek. They've strengthened their own state-owned enterprises, and some of them are global players. And yes, in China, they have more or less the same, not exactly like Temasek, but more or less the same coordinating structure. So we are doing something that is not very different from what others have done. And others have also been able to build their sovereign funds through either the dividends and the special finances that they've been able to draw out of their own state-owned enterprises. This is aimed at ensuring that as a government, we have line of sight, and that the shareholder, which is the people of South Africa, are able to see exactly what is happening in their state-owned enterprises at one glance. We will be able to see exactly how each one is happening. Board appointments, remuneration of directors, and all that. And that is easily done or effected when you have a seamless coordinating structure, rather than have these many. And of course, no doubt, not each of the more than 100 will lend themselves to meeting the criteria to be part of this, but the majority, the big ones, should be part of this because they are the ones that in the end really move the economy. Infrastructure projects that they embark upon contribute a great deal to our fixed capital investment. So this is the way in which we believe we should go. And the timing of some of those processes like capital investment would also benefit a great deal if there is closer coordination. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, the Honorable the President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, you preside over one of the largest cabinets in the world and one of the most bloated and expensive. And Mr. President, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but not all of the people all of the time. And is it the reality, Mr. President, that sitting on your desk since 2019, there's a report from the Public Service Administration, which has done all this work that you said still needs to be done, has done all the studies, and it was completed way back in 2019. And they recommend cut the size of the cabinet, reduce the number of government departments, but that's been gathering dust on your desk since 2019. Mr. President, given the fact that we've got all these ministers living like rock stars, 97 mansions worth over R1 billion, free generators, free electricity, luxury vehicles, and sadly, they're not Fortuners, they are luxury, high-end luxury vehicles. Do you think it's fair that South Africans who are suffering under this cost of living crisis should exist with these ministers living like rock stars while they're suffering? And Mr. President, are you in receipt of this report from the Department of Public Service Administration? If so, why have you done nothing about it since 2019?
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable the President.
Well, I don't know about rock stars. Yeah, I don't know about rock stars.
Honorable members, please.
The report from the public service has dealt with the issues of, yes, reconfiguration, but also from the point of view of how some of the departments can be brought together and merged. Now, for the departments to be merged, we have found, as we did in 2019, by the way, also inspired by the work of that report, we found that it takes quite a while because all of a sudden you'll find that you're merging two departments, you've got two DGs. And in some of them, you've got a number of DDGs. And as you bring the functions together, that tends to take more time, a great deal of time. And part of the work that was done to reduce from 34 to 28 was inspired by the work that was done. So that was inspired then. But then we said, we are going to do more further reconfiguration. And this is precisely what we are on the way to having done. Now, for this year and for the 15 months that we have, we've added 2 ministries. As I said, electricity, which is an existential challenge and problem right now for all of us as South Africans. 2, implementation process to make sure that everything is properly and well implemented. So, and I can understand on your side, you say it's bloated. By no means, we are not the biggest cabinet in the world. We are not by any means. And I have looked at a number of cabinets around the world. I have looked at them and I found that we are basically
Order.
basically in line with many others, having come from 28 ministers to 30, admittedly, which I have stated very clearly, the reason for that. And I've also said it is a time-bound increase, and we are going to revert back to much less than the 28, because we are dealing with challenges right now. And I know obviously on the opposition side, there's no real understanding for starters, and no understanding and no agreement. And I think that's where we part ways, and we must accept that there we part ways because we have a particular focus, and because the focus is to address electricity challenge right now, we have decided to do it in the way that we are doing right now. But as regards reconfiguration, I can tell you now that I am focused on it. And my focus started in 2019 when I reduced the ministries from 34 to 28. Now, yes, there are 30, and they are going to go further down. Watch this space. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable. The President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Vessels.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable President, you speak about good governance and that governance has improved. The problem is that the Department of Public Enterprises itself obtained adverse findings in its audit outcomes with regards to governance. And that is why governance is not improving. So a failed Department of Public Enterprises, where the Auditor General says that leadership is lacking, compliance with laws and legislation is lacking, failed. Now your government wants to replace it with a holding company. Mr. President, our problem is not only limited to electricity crisis. If you go and look at all the state-owned enterprises, they are failed and they are costing taxpayers money, and they are actually taking away money from the poor and vulnerable. Will this state-owned holding company not cost the taxpayer more money and be more failed than the Department of Public Enterprises under your government? But I do want to agree that this is a transition, because next year there will be a different government than an ANC government. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Vessels. The President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I see Honorable Groenewald doing what they do in soccer matches. I didn't know that you love soccer so much. Honorable Speaker and Honorable Vessels, you will be pleased to hear that the Presidential SOE Council, in crafting their proposal, which they will soon finalize, they're actually saying, in the end, the way the state-owned enterprise holding company should be structured, it should not, in the end, cost the taxpayer money. And we've got financiers who are looking very closely at how it should be structured and financed. And they have made it a point that we do not want this to be a drain on the fiscus. So I've taken quite a lot of courage from that, because even those who have, in a way, been a bit doubtful about whether this is the best way to go, when they have heard the structure and the way it could function and the coordination process, because it just does not leave things messy, and our state-owned enterprises in a messy situation, but well coordinated. But the policies and regulation being done by departments, and it is the shareholder relationships and the management thereof. They have taken quite a lot of courage and confidence in that. So it is a transition not of the type that you're talking about. It is a transition to a better management of our state-owned enterprises. A number of our state-owned enterprises are operating rather well. I can cite one really good one, which I used to be associated with, Sasria. Sasria operates extremely well and has been one of those that has paid dividends from way back when I used to be a chairman thereof. And it was only now with the unrest that it needed some bailout money. But it has supported a lot of businesses, almost completely outside the mandate that it originally had. So we've got a number of state-owned entities that are working very well. And should I name another? There are quite a few. They are not coming to mind now as I stand here. But there are quite a number. The Denel, yes, you raised Denel. Denel, no, but Denel is one of its kind on our continent. One of its kind on our continent, and it's well positioned to compete with a number of arms manufacturers in the world. And the orders that Denel has now is just going to make it shoot right through the roof. But it has needed support. And we have decided to give it support rather than shut it down. I mean, the IP that resides in Denel is just amazing. Even those who come from outside, when they look at the IP that we've got, they are just amazed that we've got such a company on the African continent. No, but Eskom, we all know. I mean, we all know what's happening with Eskom. No. Now we're repositioning. I like this. Speaker, I like this. Transnet, no, Transnet? No, let's talk about Transnet. Transnet is facing challenges right now, but we've got clear plans. Clear plans. I'm going to be, having conversations with a number of those people. Now, what we have done, I mean, if you take care to listen to what we've done, Transnet's challenges have got to do with investments. And a few months ago, they issued a bond. They issued a bond which was oversubscribed, about $1 billion, well oversubscribed, which shows that investors still have a lot of confidence in the ability of Transnet to operate well. They're facing challenges now, and their challenge is investment. And that is why we've embarked on a process of inviting those with capital, those who have the money, to help us with our ports, to help us with a number of their operations. And it's a well-managed process. We're going to be inviting those who can participate in the concessions that are going to be made. And this is done in many other countries. So we are going to strengthen Transnet, and Transnet used to be a great operator, and we are going to take it exactly where it is. And a number of others that have really faced a number of challenges, but the resolve amongst us is to reposition our state-owned enterprises, and the state-owned enterprise holding company is going to be a great boon, because we will have clear line of sight of what is happening in our key state-owned enterprises and be able to introduce discipline in order to introduce much better operating systems, the financial systems as well. So I'm very confident that the assets that we've got are soon going to be turned around and they'll be made to operate better. And even people in the private sector are saying, this is the way to go, because they know very well how coordination can help companies to operate a lot better. So we are on a journey and we are going to get there. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you very much, the Honorable President. The last question has been asked by the Honorable PJ Groenewald.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, the expropriation bill is currently in the National Council of Provinces. My constitutional obligation in terms of Section 79 of the Constitution is to satisfy myself of the constitutionality of a bill before I assent to it. If I have reservations about the constitutionality of a bill, once I receive it, and only once I receive it, am I constitutionally obliged to send it back to the House first. The Constitution only provides for a role for the Constitutional Court if I am not satisfied with the constitutionality of a bill after this House has reconsidered it. I cannot make such a determination, Honorable Groenewald, until Parliament has finalized its work and the bill is on my desk for assent. As I have previously said to this House, the expropriation bill is critical to addressing a hunger that our people have for land. Deprivation of land was central to the disenfranchisement and dispossession of the majority of South Africans. Addressing this historical injustice is critical to increasing the promise of our constitutional dispensation. This principle is enshrined in our Constitution, where Section 25 speaks of the nation's commitment to land reform and to reforms to bring about equitable access to all South Africa's natural resources. The state is enjoined in our Constitution to take reasonable legislative and other measures within its available resources to foster conditions which enable citizens to gain access to land on an equitable basis. We are also empowered to take legislative and other measures to achieve land, water, and related reforms to redress the results of past discrimination. We are committed to respecting our Constitution and fulfilling its promises. So once that process is done and the bill is presented to me on my desk, it is then that I will be able to examine the issues of whether it is constitutionally compliant or not. Thank you.
And thank you, the Honorable President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable PJ Groenewald.
Geachte Speaker, geachte President, may I make misuse of my own time and just want quickly to respond on the police matter. Honorable President, I would like you to ask and talk to your Minister for Police, because yes, we need 10,000 new members. But as we speak now, there is a deficit of 358 trainers in the police services. And I don't need to tell anyone that a police member who is not trained well is not only a danger for him or herself, but also for the community. So it's no use to have 10,000 new members, but they are not well trained. Coming to your answer, thank you, Honorable President. You referred to the process. I agree. But Honorable President, will you also agree that if we look at the process of the expropriation bill, it actually started in 2015. There was an effort from the governing party to amend section 25 of the constitution because it is quite clear. It says that there should be and there must be compensation, which is fair and equitable. Now, government party did not succeed. Now they continue with the same principle with other words to say, well, it's actually not compensation without expropriation without compensation. It is actually compensation at nul value. Nou, achtbare president, mense hoef nie baie intelligent te wees om te weet, as die waarde nul is dit so goed soos onteiening sonder vergoeding. And don't you think it is, and it will enhance more trust from potential investors in South Africa, also especially as far as the agricultural sector is concerned, that there is more certainty that they will know that it will go to the Constitutional Court to be tested. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Groenewald, thank you very much for your response on the police trainers issue. It's certainly a matter that I'd like to take forward and look into. Thank you very much for that information. On the issue of the expropriation bill, and also you compare it with section 25. The interpretation, and those who are legal eagles, when they interpret section 25, they do say, embedded in that section 25 is a process where the compensation, when you take into account all the issues or the factors that are set out in section 25, how the land was acquired, what it is used, what it was used for, and all that the use that it will be put to in the future and so forth, could also result in nil compensation. And similarly, the expropriation bill. Now, the last part of your input is very instructive in that, in the end, because we live in a constitutional state that is ruled by the rule of law, in the end, the expropriation bill does cater for that. That if, for instance, you have an issue, a complaint, or whatever, you are entitled to take that up. And that is what I think infuses confidence in investors, knowing that South Africa is a country that is ruled by the rule of law, it's a constitutional state, and that if you have any dispute of whatever nature, you would be able to approach our courts and be able to get justice. Now, clearly, section 25, yes, talks about equitable compensation. And in the end, the Expropriation Act also refers to that. Yes, it does talk about, it could be nil compensation. It has been made clearer in the Expropriation Act, but it is also the understanding, the interpretation is also embedded in section 25. And those who've given us that type of interpretation have made that clear. But in the end, the real guarantee for any investor, for anyone, is that because we have a robust judicial system, we have a robust constitutional court, in the end, that becomes our defense, our defender. But if you look at that act as well, you have to go through a number of processes before you even arrive at that level which you are complaining about. So I am going to wait for that bill to be finalized. And in the process of finalizing it, maybe greater wisdom will come through. There will be further amendments and redrafting. The concerns that you're putting forward can be inserted,
And then when it comes as president, I will look at it. And if it requires that it should be tested, yes, in the Constitutional Court, it will be so. If it requires that it should be returned to the House, it will be so. So this process, Honorable Groenewald, is transparent. It's a process that has been inclusive. And I do believe that investors take a great deal of courage in looking at the way that we deal with matters that are as sensitive as this. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, the Honorable the President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable N. Dobongwana.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable President, for explaining clearly to Honorable Groenewald. In fact, Honorable President, this expropriation bill is repealing an old apartheid expropriation act number 63 of 1975 that was passed by fathers or forefathers of some of the members that are here. In fact, thank you. In fact, President, what this parliament is actually doing is to ensure that there is transformation in this country. It is therefore, honorable members, our constitutional role as members of this parliament to process legislation that is before us, to ensure that all matters relating to constitutionality are therefore—
Question, honorable members, you're out of time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I would then just ask President to explain to the House how then this bill will be implemented by the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure. Thank you.
I thank you, the honorable member, the Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And I'd like to thank Honorable Ntobongwana for making reference, because that's, I think, the historical reference is also important. It's important to have a little bit of a history, because the Expropriation Act of the Apartheid era was used to good effect without any compensation. That is true. I was born, I want to tell you a personal story. I was born on the 17th of November, 1952, at 1627 Letanka Street in Western Native Township. My mother was born 5 kilometers out of Louis Trichardt. And in 1962, my mother's family in Louis Trichardt and my mother's family in Johannesburg, we were both removed. We were both moved from where we were both born. And I promise you, my mother's family, where they lived 5 kilometers out of Louis Trichardt, they did not get compensation. And we were later told it was the Expropriation Act that was used. No compensation. They were taken and dumped almost 40 kilometers away from Louis Trichardt. Myself, my sister and brother and father and mother, we were taken from Western Native Township, 5 kilometers out of Johannesburg to almost 30 kilometers from Johannesburg to Soweto. We had a beautiful home, no compensation. So what the honorable member has referred to is what our lived experience as Black people in this country has been about. Being removed, possessions taken away from us, no compensation, nil compensation. and not even the ability to go to any court to go and raise your dispute. Zero. Today, more or less exactly the same piece of legislation is being revived because any government around the world has the right to expropriate. If you want to build a railway line and there are people living there, you can move them, expropriate the land. Sometimes there is payment and at times there is no payment. And it happens all over the world. UK, America, Japan, various parts of our own continent. So this thing is not new. However, we are saying because we are a constitutional state, which the apartheid regime was not. And that is why my own family and many other families here were removed, including yours, Thengwa, were removed with zero compensation. So, Honorable Groenewald, I can hear what you're saying. It could be future jeopardy, but we've had past jeopardy on this side of the table. So some of us have lived through it, but we are going to make sure that because we're in a constitutional state, it is done in terms of our laws and constitution. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, Honorable the President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, I'm glad you've spoken about the injustice and constitutional imperative, because it is something we all have to do and work towards. So I put before you today, Mr. President, that communal ownership is preventing large parts of South Africa from being farmed and operated productively, because people cannot get finance, they cannot invest in upgrading that land and get the requisite loan capital to do so. And this is obviously contributing to the massive food crisis and the poverty crisis in the country. Mr. President, I would ask then why your government has not empowered South Africans living in rural areas in terms of section 25(6) of the Constitution to give them private ownership in those areas. Because it's becoming clear that, that your government does not trust these 18 million Black South Africans with private land ownership. And if that is the case, Mr. President, they deserve an explanation why they don't deserve private ownership. Are you able to give that today?
Thank you, Honorable Leader of Opposition. The Honorable, the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable members, order, please.
Our transformation process has, since 1994, has had to be dealing with the legacy of our past. Legacy of our past, which balkanized our country, created Bantustans, and created the land ownership process that we have now, or situation that we have now, where yes, we have got areas where a number of people, majority of our people live in rural areas, communal areas, where yes, their land tenure is tenuous. Now, we have been in discussion, and this process has been led by former Deputy President David Mabuza. I've now given this task to Deputy President Paul Mashatile to carry on with this task, and he's going to hit the road running. He's going to hit the road running because we've been in discussion with our traditional leaders about how we deal with communal land, and the talks have been very fruitful and positive. And so we are going to be reaching a point of resolving this matter. And so all efforts are going to be made to address this matter, and Deputy President Mashatile's hands are going to be full of this matter, and I have no doubt, that he's going to make great strides in having this matter resolved. So it's a matter that is being addressed, and it is going to be addressed very positively. And thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you very much, the Honorable the President. Honorable members, the last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable B.N. Heron.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, Mr. President. Mr. President, as you said, Section 25 of the Constitution says that the amount of compensation must be just and equitable. And as you indicated, many legal experts already interpret this to include nil compensation. But we don't need legal experts because the Constitutional Court already settled this about 20 years ago, when it said that there are appropriate circumstances where it is permissible in the broader public interest to deprive persons of property without payment of compensation. There are many examples, Mr. President, where it would be just and equitable to expropriate private property for nil compensation. And I would love to have time to unpack the living conditions of privately owned migrant labor hostels built in the apartheid era, and where all spheres of government say we cannot provide services to those who live in those hostels because they are privately owned, but they've been long ago abandoned by the owners who built those properties. So the question, Mr. President, is not whether the matter is constitutional, but how the government intends to use the act when it is enacted. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Heron. The Honorable the President.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker and Honorable Heron, for actually reminding us and citing that judgment almost 20 years ago. It's a judgment that has become so obscure that many people are not alive to it, because that is the way the Constitutional Court has interpreted Section 25 of our Constitution. And as it turns out, it is, as I said earlier, it is a practice that prevails all over the world. In many countries, it prevails. The state can expropriate property, land, and with just compensation or with nil compensation. Happens many places around the world. And in the end, it depends for what reason it is being done. And if it is being done for public interest, public purpose, it is able to do so. Now, you raise a very important question, because the expropriation bill, in the end, is the bill that is actually going to have to enhance precisely transformational processes like the one that you've cited. For instance, we've got hostels which have been abandoned by their owners and which need to be given attention to, where the government does need to provide services, and where, for instance, the local government is hesitant to do so. The appropriation bill will make it much clearer that it can be used as an instrument for public interest and public purpose. So that's precisely how this expropriation bill has been structured, and that is how it is going to be used to advance the interests of our people collectively. And it will be for public purpose and for public use. And that will be driving the transformation process going forward. So for those who think that we will just use it willy-nilly, I just want to assure them that it's going to be used for public purpose and for the interests of our people and for transformational purposes. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable President. Honorable members, we've done very well with time. It is now 10 to 5. That concludes the questions to the President And I thank the Honorable, the President. And I also thank the honorable members for your good conduct. Order. I request members to stand and wait for the chair and the maids to leave the chamber. That concludes the business for the day, and the House is adjourned.
Recording in
the-
progress.
The Chief Justice, and it's the same process. And therefore you are incorrect, sir, by suggesting that by not being vetted by an institution that had gone rogue at that particular time, and it was known, it was in the public domain that this institution had gone rogue. And that institution, I had been told by journalists just after this last interview on the Gupta lending matter, that it was the institution responsible for the first spy story.
Yeah, okay. All right. I'm going to argue, maybe let me make it quick here. I'm going to argue that it's inappropriate for the head of an institution to impose a policy that says people at a particular level must have clearance. In other words, if you had these objections, then you should have the objections in principle rather than imposing it on other people, but not on yourself. That's the first issue I'm going to argue. I've heard your response to that. That's fine. But I just want to move to the issue that you touched on, which I had not touched on. So basically, both you and the Deputy Public Protector were not security cleared.
Has had been the institution since its inception.
I take that as a yes.
It is a yes.
Good. And in the case of the former the Deputy Public Protector, I think he spoke about this openly in the Portfolio Committee. One of the issues why did he attempt to get security cleared?
Not during my time, because it was not a requirement. The Deputy Public Protector was not the first Deputy Public Protector. Advocate Shai was the first Deputy Public Protector. For 2 terms, nobody tried to vet her.
Yes.
And there were 2 public protectors before me. For 2 terms, nobody tried to vet them. But there was an equivalent parliamentary process that I regarded as equivalent to vetting. And that's the open one where anybody can, during the process, bring in issues.
Ma'am, it's going to help us a lot if you just answer the question. So at that particular time, for all the good reasons you've mentioned, both you and the Deputy Public Protector were not security cleared, yes, no?
I've answered that question. I don't know what kind of answer do you want anymore, because
I
I
want a-
normally say
I want a straight
yes,
answer.
and then I give you additional information.
Yeah, you
Okay,
must
let me
just
just,
give me the answer.
if I can come in here, Professor Madonsela, you did answer the question. Perhaps you need to, I think he's asking for shorter answers. That's
I would
what he's.
say, through you, Chair, my answer would be, we were vetted in a different way, in that we went through the kind of vetting that you see in the United States, where MPs like yourselves are allowed to get as many people from the public to submit to you anything that they know about this person that they think makes them not a fit and proper person. So my view is that we were vetted, maybe not security cleared by the state security agency. And if I were to make that decision, not to allow myself to be vetted by them at that particular point, I would still make it.
All right, and okay, so okay, fine. We'll take that as a yes again. Yeah, and I wanted to say that in the case of Mr. Malunga, and I think this is something he spoke about openly. One of the issues that was raised for, or rather that might have stalled his security clearance, was the fact that he came from Zimbabwe. You remember that?
I don't appoint deputy public protectors. I didn't know that because I had never asked him. I had never tried to get him vetted, because that was a parliamentary process.
Yes, okay. But you knew that he came from Zimbabwe?
No. I knew that he lived in Zimbabwe, he had lived in Swaziland. I didn't know where he came from. I never asked him.
Oh, come on, Advocate Matonsela. This is something that was being discussed in the public domain, but that's fine. That's your answer. That's your answer. And
I never asked
yeah,
him.
yeah, no, I know it's your answer. I just find it incredulous. Yeah, but anyway, that's fine. Mr. Malunga was called as a witness, but it was decided that he shouldn't come. So I don't think it would be unfair to discuss him in his absence. But you yourself, you were born in South Africa?
I was, certainly. You know that information, don't you?
No, I wasn't there when you were born, ma'am. I'm just.
I think it's in the public domain. Like you say, I should have known about Malunga. You should have known about me too.
Okay, so so then you agree with me that you should have known about Malunga now?
Well, I'm saying by your logic, I don't agree with you. I'm just saying by your logic, then you should have known about me. It's not my logic, it's your logic.
I see. No, that's fine, ma'am. The public is listening. No, I was simply distinguishing. I was saying that in your case, rather, in his case, there was that issue, but that issue did not arise in your case. And so I'm just wondering, okay, let me ask this question so that we move on to the next topic. When, for example, as you correctly say, this was raised with you when you were investigating the so-called Gupta landing at Waterkloof, don't you think that that particular issue, obviously the landing of a foreign plane in Waterkloof, which is a military airport, would be a matter dealt with by the SANDF and, among others, military intelligence? Don't you think that your lack of clearance of cleared status would limit you in investigating something like that, because it might involve documents to which somebody like you would not have access? And just, if you don't think so, just say so, don't tell me why. If you do think so, just tell me.
I don't think so, in the same way that it doesn't limit judges. But you are correct, you are incorrect again, you've distorted